So, and you're going to mop up, have you?
Yeah. It's when you get old.
Saying that. Councillors and members of the gallery, please note that we are about to commence recording this meeting. Your video and audio will be recorded and live streamed from now onwards. The video will be available on YouTube after the meeting has finished. So I declare this meeting open, the ordinary meeting of the 20th of September 2022. We gather today to duly and faithfully carry out our duties to the best of our advancement and ability for the advancement of this district and the benefit of all of the community and fellow citizens. Coorong District Council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, Ngarrindjeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people, the country, and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. And councillors, on behalf of the Coorong District Council, I acknowledge the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and extend our sincere condolences to the royal family. Her late Majesty will be remembered for her 70 years of service to the Commonwealth and our state. I also acknowledge the accession of His Majesty King Charles III as Australia's new sovereign. I ask everyone to be upstanding for a minute's silence, please. Thank you, councillors. Item 1, councillors, on the agenda is apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Ling and Councillor Arthur. Acknowledgements. 2 councillors. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Don Edmonds Wilson, who was from Canalpin, who recently passed. Don served on the former Canalpin 9 years, and that's from July 1966 through to May 1995. Don also served as the chairman for 3 separate periods from 1974 to 76, 78 to 80, and finally in 1987 to 89. Probably not a better, concise, considerate man would you come across in this world. So I will extend my condolences to the family in the near future. Councillor Bland is going to read something in acknowledgement of the passing of Peter Mansfield Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I am. Peter Mansfield Cameron was a Tanganini Ramangeri, apologise in advance, corn man, not big in stature, but with a big presence, who believed in caring, sharing, and getting a job done. Always passionate about pre-settlement culture, which he called the truth. Post-settlement culture he described as generic. Peter had a saying which he thought was very applicable to our current way of life. There is only one race on this planet, the human race. So let's respect each other's differences. Wiritajan, which is a Ramangeri word devised after sealers and whalers came to their country and means working together for good, Aboriginal and white people. Peter would have been very surprised, but inwardly pleased regarding the acknowledgement, as his thoughts would have been that he was just getting jobs done when the opportunity was there. How? Thank you. Ngakini Mirawa, thank you, good fellows. Peter, on behalf of his wife, Meryl, and Rav. Peter also, in relation to this council, worked very strongly to bring the Black Anzacs to acknowledgement, and we've seen that on the wall, which was a living piece of art, which was meant to fade over time. Sure that in the Memorial Park, that also now continues into the future. He also had strong links with the Waters. He was a Northern Coorong man. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bland. Any others? Councillor Yench, if you got an acknowledgement, have you?
I would like to personally acknowledge both of these gentlemen, Mr. Mayor, having known them both and known the efforts that they put in for this community. I believe it's.
So, Councillor, process with acknowledgements is that the Mayor really needs to be advised, and Councillor Bland did do that. So thank you. Number 2, confirmation of minutes. There's the ordinary meeting held on the 16th of August. Councillor Wallman, Councillor Sue's seconding this. Councillor Taylor, thank you. Is there any discussion, councillors, on those minutes? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Could someone move the minutes of the special meeting held on the 1st of September, please? Councillor Rountree. Councillor Bland is the seconder. Any discussion, councillors, at all? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 3 is adjourned business. I have no adjourned business. Just while I'm just as a little announcement to the public, at the special meeting of the 1st of September, the councillors were not heard on the audio because the wire had come out, transmits their voice. That's why they may have been heard in the different distance, but the remote mic and the front table mic. So hopefully everyone today can hear that is listening. It was simply a technical issue. Minute action list, item 4, Councillor Qualman, you want to speak to minute 12222.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dear Mayor and elected members, I would like to raise minute 122/22, Councillor G.A. Taylor, solar powered bench seating, and my conflict of interest declaration in relation to that item. During the June 2022 Ordinary Council meeting, I declared a conflict of interest owing to my position as Vice Chair of the Taylor Bend Progress Association and remained in the room and voted on the item. Upon review of my declaration, I understand that I did not properly identify the type of conflict or how I intended to manage it, and on reflection, feel that I should have declared it as a material interest and left the meeting. I apologise to the Chamber for not properly identifying and managing my conflict of interest within accordance with the Local Government Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I move to any questions from councillors regarding the minute action list.
One question, why isn't it in the agenda?
There's no minute action list.
There's no minute action list.
Is it in the information document?
It's normally.
I have the same problem, councillors, and I'm not sure. I thought it might have just been not printed for me.
Well, sorry. Can't have questions, it's not there. We'll attempt to rectify that. Not in there.
Apologies, councillors.
We'll just put that off for a minute. Move to item 5.1, questions with notice. There is none. 5.2, questions without notice. Councillor Hill.
To you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Is it, in your opinion, that the vote of a councillor who was elected unopposed or did not have to face an election has less value than the votes of those who faced an electorate?
No.
Because a concerned citizen sent me a copy of a recording of you making a disparaging comment about Councillor Leng about just that issue, that he was He stood for the Lakes Ward.
So
And
you
was
got
elected
a copy of
unopposed?
that today, councillor, or a statement or
I can give you a transcript of that recording.
once again, councillor, things like this could be brought to me at any stage instead of in the election campaign.
Well, I only received it at the last moment and I'm not running for re-election, so I'm not
Fair.
electioneering, but I'm appalled about those comments that was recently made. It also reflects on councillor Bland and myself, who also stood unopposed in the Lakes Ward. People put up their hand to serve their community in good faith, regardless of their political and personal beliefs or whether they faced an election or not. And you will be receiving my resignation at the end of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I'm on questions without notice. There is no more. Reports by members, the Mayor's report, 6.1, councillors, is in the agenda. Any questions? I thank councillor Qualman for his wrap up of the Roads and Works Conference. I think what come to me talking to industry people was the enormous lift or increase in demand for I won't say road making materials, but things like parks and gardens and those sort of things. And that's why we've had a lot of delays. They could not believe how much the stimulus has increased their amount of demand for their products. I understand, I'm looking at Miles now, that in relation to the meeting with Nick Champion, we may have some progress in relation to the issue of the Tintinara airfield.
Yes, Your Worship. So an indication that the Planning Commission or the state government will lead a code amendment which will replace the code policy that was lost in the transition from the development plan to the planning code. I don't have any more details,
No.
but I've already ensured that that is included in the regional plan engagement strategy. So I've locked it in as best I can.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, councillors, out of my report? I move on to council members' reports. Councillor Qualman, you want to add anything to your report?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that the Mayor, myself and Councillor Bland and Councillor Arthur and Director of Roads Infrastructure, Matt James, and the CEO all attended on what I thought was a very productive day there at Murray Beach. I found quite rewarding and a feast for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may make a comment, even though I have, as I attended that conference as well, I too found it quite valuable, and I agree with what Councillor Gorman has said, but I'd like to add that one of the key components out of that I got from that is attraction, retention of staff, and the limitations placed on council to be able to attract and retain staff within the limits of the budget, and looking for the appropriate skill mix. So I found for a long time that hadn't been addressed, but it certainly was addressed well this time.
Thank you. Councillor Rountree, your report, anything you want to add?
No, thank you.
Questions to you? To councillors. Councillor, we're just emailing you the minute action list, but we might deal with it later in the meeting if someone remind me, please. Motions with notice, councillors. I have nil. Item 7.2, motions without notice, councillors. I have none. Number 8, Office of the Chief Executive Officer's report. There is a report, item 1, community grants, round minute 07422, legal expenditure. Councillors, it says that the report providing response to the minute, legal expenditure 18 to 2022 be received. Is someone moving that way? Councillor Rountree. Councillor Qualman is the seconder. Any discussion around that motion, councillors?
I would just thank the staff for the work they put into getting us that far with the information.
Councillor Bland.
I too will thank the staff, as I know it's not that simple, but I do have a follow-up question, and that is around that, particularly around legal issues. I understand there's possibly some still outstanding, and at what point does this cut off?
As in the report, councillor, a date was in
A
the
date.
report?
It basically refers to 18 to 22.
We're in the
I
report.
think there's a 31st of August, but I'm just wondering if that is right up to date, or in fact, we've still got more outstanding from this previous council, given that we're now in caretaker mode and going into a new council.
The CEO is on Zoom, sorry to all the public today. She's at the Murray Darling Association AGM, I think, at Albury, but she's there. Bridget, can you answer that?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. It does go to the 31st of August and it's completed cases. So that's all I can say on that matter.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors, around that report?
Follow-up question in light of that, some of us may or may not be back here in the future, and that is that, are we able to keep a track of the illegal expenditure for the future?
Are we able to?
Now that we've set this in motion, are we able to then just follow through and request a report in the future?
Through
Through you, your worship, with the local government reforms, there's now a requirement for all councils to report on their legal expenditure. So
Okay,
that
so-
will become an annual item of reporting.
Okay, so it won't be as hard as it has been this time. Thank you.
Anything else? Roundtree, you can close.
Please.
I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 2, the Local Government Association Conference and Annual General Meeting. There's a recommendation there. Councillor Qualman, are you moving that way? For a seconder, Councillor Taylor, any discussion? The recommendation is that council endorses the attendance of the mayor at the 2022 LGA Conference and Annual General Meeting on the 27th and the 28th of October. All right, there's no further debate. Councillor Bland, you are thinking of something.
Well, it's just borderline in relation to,
Question, I trust.
it is a question. And that while I actually do believe in people going to this conference, I am concerned that quite a few of us, including yourself, may or may not be here, and whether the wording should just be, the dates are a bit difficult. I can't believe they've pulled it at this time.
It'd be a subject for future review is why we have this meeting at this date.
Then I would move that a councillor
You can't move.
as well.
You can only put an amendment if you wish.
Correct. Well, I will move amendment that a councillor attend the annual Government Association Conference to be decided at a later date.
Given that some consideration around, do we have to name the councillors going to that AGM? Probably not.
Other than yourself, who's voting delegate? Is the project? The booking could be made regardless, I guess, of who the.
Yeah. You want to speak to your amendment, councillor?
Yes, I do believe that given that there may in fact be a new deputy mayor who may wish to go, or a new councillor.
There won't be any new
At
councillor
some-
on this date. That's the first.
Yes,
point.
I accept that.
Unless
but
you know
then-
something I don't know.
No, I do not. So yes, I accept that, but I do believe that given that sitting in this room right now, other than one, everyone else will be attending, will be in the mix for the future. I think we can assume that at least 4 in this room probably would return, and therefore we should consider the opportunity to put someone in.
There a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Yench is the seconder. You want to speak, councillor?
Yes, Mr Mayor, that I concur with this amendment based on the fact that we sent people to the Roads Conference under similar circumstances, although it was not that long ago, but everything is getting to the pointy end of who may or not be around the table. And it would be, I think, to the incoming council's advantage to potentially at least have had someone who went. We do not know the outcomes yet.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Taylor, you can. Is it for or against?
Thank you, Mayor. Against. I find this a difficult one because it's on the 27th and 28th of October. So there are no guarantees that anyone in this room will be coming back. And therefore, for an individual to have that knowledge, then it's a waste of money. It might be beneficial to the individual that attends in some way, but it doesn't really benefit the ratepayers to spend money on someone who may not get in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Rountree, speaking for or against?
Speaking
Against the, and this is an amendment we're talking.
yeah, against the amendment to just let someone go purely because of the dates. I think if it wasn't an election year, you could have a valid argument to say it's beneficial, but we don't know who's going to get in, if any of us. Could be a whole new team. I just don't think this one in particular is worth spending the money on at this next year, perhaps, but not this year.
Anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? The amendment, sorry. Councillor Bland, you'll close.
In closing, I would say that I understand the argument, but I do have concern for the same argument on the original motion. It would be the same problem. And I close in relation
Thank
to the
you.
amendment.
So I put the amendment. Those in favour? Those against the amendment? The amendment is lost. So we revert to the motion, simply that the mayor attends the conference. Is there any further debate on that? Councillor Taylor, you're a seconder and you haven't spoken to that. Yes, I think that's fine.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Mayor is the voting delegate of the council, and therefore it is entirely appropriate that the Mayor attend in this situation, whether or not anybody in the room gets back in or not. The Mayor is the voting delegate and therefore must represent the council. Thank you.
Councillor Bland,
Firstly, a question, is the CEO going?
as you note in the report, she's giving a nod, I think, from here on the screen. Which screen you can see, councillor? But
Then
I
my-
think, but she goes as a matter of a different process, as you know.
So my understanding from previously, when the CEO is there or where the mayor or someone else hasn't been able to be in attendance, that he or she could vote.
Through you, Mayor, I need to check that with Ash. I'm not sure whether,
Through you, Mayor, if the mayor is not the voting delegate, then we have to submit a different delegate, basically. So
Thank you.
And as you know, council, there's also the Local Government Finance Authority, which has a separate meeting on the Friday morning.
Yes.
Anyone else to wish to add to this debate? Sorry, I'll keep looking at Zoom. Okay, councillor Wildman, you will actually close.
Yes, I'll close. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I put the recommendation as it reads in the agenda, councillors. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried 6-1 with councillor Yench voting against going, and the remaining councillors votes against the recommendation, and the remaining councillors all vote for it. Thank you for that. Number 9, council policies. There is nil to review at this stage. Number 10, section 41 committees and section 43 subsidiaries. Number 1, the finance committee meeting minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of September. If someone was prepared to move that recommendation, councillors Bland and Roundtree. Any discussion around that, councillors? There being none, councillor, you'll close.
I'm closed.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously that time. Number 2, Audit and Risk Committee meeting. There's a recommendation when I get to it. Council received the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 13th of September. Councillor Bland, you moving that way?
I am.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree. Speak to it.
Yes, I had the opportunity to drop in and listen to the audit committee meeting. It was quite a pleasure actually to sit there and listen to our new independent members work as a team, and certainly gave our staff a little bit of a grilling, which I think they handled particularly well. But it was a pleasure, very professional. Thank you.
Councillor Qualman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. As the chamber is aware, it was my first sitting in as a council member on the Audit and Risk Committee, and I found it quite informative and well chaired and at ease to ask questions. And I think it was held, the meeting was held professionally, and I quite enjoyed it actually.
Thank you. Councillor Roundtree of the seconder, do you want to add anything?
No, thanks.
Anyone else want to add anything? Okay. Councillor Bland closing.
Consider it closed.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 3, Marylands and Riverland LGA. Minutes of our annual general meeting held on the 26th of August. Mover for that one, please. Councillor Roundtree. Councillor Qualman. Speak to Councillor Roundtree or not?
No, thank you.
Councillors, you'll note that it was the first meeting attended by our new CEO of the association, Aaron McLeod. And also the last meeting for quite a few regional mayors who have retired. Anyone got any further things to add to that? Councillor Roundtree?
Question really, or a recommendation. These reports are good. They're long to read. It would sort of, I'm not sure if it's appropriate or it would make it our life easier, but if there's anything in there that the CEO believes needs to be brought to our attention, that maybe we could summarise that if it is. I don't think there is from reading it. I did read it. So it's very long.
So Bridget, do you want to add anything to the process? You can go to index. I've been pointed out.
Through you, Mayor. I think the new CEO will start to recraft the look and feel of it. I know with the CEO's meeting the other day, it was a very different look and feel to a agenda. So I'll have a look at the next one that comes out, and then the minutes, and then we'll have a look to see how we might pull some of that information out. We might just even pull the recommendations to the front, if that helps.
I think through Mayor, something like that would really be beneficial for this group because there's so much to wade through that if we had an idea of what we really needed to set our minds to, if anything, could be useful. So thank you for that.
I think because it's a subsidiary of ours, we have to probably report the whole meeting to you,
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
including the minutes from a formal point of view, but we take on board what you're saying.
thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to that? Okay, councillor Rountree, you've closed. I'm taking that. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. 11.1 Planning System Implementation Review.
Yes, Mr.
Councillor Yentz, you're moving that way, are you?
Yes.
You're a seconder. Councillor Bland, Councillor Yentz, do you want to speak to it?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The recommendation is that council receive and note the Planning System Implementation Review Report. The manager would like to make a comment? Sure, certainly.
Just a brief comment, Your Worship. I met with Karen McLeod yesterday and raised this review, and we are looking to develop a regional response, a regional submission. But there are some common issues, I think, that apply to regional councils, such as dwelling excision in rural zones, temporary housing policies. So we will come together and bring a submission which will go through the MRLGA for endorsement.
Thank you. Anyone else, councillors? Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 23, the fourth paragraph in the report under discussion, it says for applicants who may have difficulty navigating online portal, staff provide a personalised and helpful service. Through the chair to the Director of Corporate and Community, is the staff being overloaded, or we getting hardly any questions, or you're getting a lot of people coming in, or what's the feedback been like, or the inquiry rate, please, on that side of things?
Through you, Your Worship, I wouldn't say we're being overloaded in that respect. I think most of the people who portal bases, such as builders, don't need any assistance from council. So it's the one-off situation, someone who's got a shed and they're an owner builder, let's say, and they're only going to use the portal maybe once or twice in their life. So that's where we provide that sort of one-on-one service. So I wouldn't say that aspect is overloading. In general, our workload hasn't decreased because of the portal. And that's probably more of a policy issue.
Right.
And that's certainly something that Planning SA is well aware of, because that is something that's occurring across the state.
Another question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair to the Community and Corporate again. Just excuse my ignorance, but does council put out, we had this big change in the portal system and all that. We going out in various forms of communication, like local papers and that, who sometimes explain what's involved, like an information document, or we put an information out there to help people who, because a lot of us are not IT, savvy on this sort of stuff. Do we put out information at all?
Your Worship, once you enter into the portal, it is reasonably user friendly, and there are guides on the portal site. Again, I think this is a good issue to raise with the planning review, because one of the things I've found is that there probably is somewhat of a lack of guidance on a statewide basis, especially again for people who might consider it a daunting prospect. And one of the key things with the portal, because it's online, you have to be very accurate with your plans and your designs. You can't have any more of this drawings not to scale. They have to be to scale. But you can achieve that without having to go to a draftsperson and spend a lot of money. And this is where the portal comes in. But I think they can do a lot better in terms of those one-off sheds and those smaller scale development applications. And I intend to ensure that's raised in the review.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Anyone else? Closing, councillor.
Close, Mr Mayor.
Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 2, South Australian arbovirus, is it how we say it? And mosquito monitoring and control annual report 21-22. And moving that way, councillors, councillor Yench. Councillors, there a seconder, councillor Bland. Is there any questions around the report, councillor?
My question, if I might, through you, Thomas, is around resourcing for the monitoring of this. I know that we're working with the universities and our health inspectors. However, they're thin on the ground and it's a very wide district, particularly in relation to JSE and monitoring of pigs, etc.
Through your worship, thank you for the question. Resources have been significantly increased by in SA Health in terms of the Japanese encephalitis monitoring, PIRSA on the monitoring trapping for piggery sites. SA Health have employed a number of officers for additional trapping. They've increased their surveillance program, taken in extra councils, increased their Sentinel chicken testing. Of the money that has been directed to SA Health from the federal government, a good portion of that being provided to councils, including Coorong, and hence our costs in regards trapping are fully funded by SA Health for this coming season to a value of $30,000. So I'm very comfortable with the arrangements we have in place for shared services with the rural city of Murray Bridge, that we do have adequate resources. And in fact, the SA Health are indicating, should we find that the season ends up being more onerous, that they will consider providing additional funding. This is being taken as an extremely serious issue by federal and state governments, and they're very grateful of the support of councils.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors?
Close, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The recommendations there, councillors, those in favour? Against, that's carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 12, infrastructure and assets report. This month there's nil. 13 petitions, which I have nil. Number 14, deputations. We have none. 14.1, in accordance with council's caretaker policy, questions or statements from the gallery during a full council meeting will not be received during the election period. That's part of our policy, so we have none. We move information document, councillors. Councillor Roundtree.
Question on the traffic counter data. I'm just wondering what the purpose of putting them in those particular locations was.
So
That's page 12.
that is in relation to the service road and Princess Highway, Talon Bend.
Yes, but they were like, there was one out the front of Smedley's, I think.
So we've had a couple requests for people feel that traffic is speeding
Oh, okay.
in that area. So we had some trouble with the counters in a previous attempt. Matt, do you want to add anything to the?
It was discussed at a council workshop or meeting. I can't recall exactly, that there were some issues with speeding on the service roads. There was actually another site that we also collected data from, but it didn't malfunction. So we have an issue with one of the counters, excuse me. But the 85th percentile speed shows that the majority of vehicles are obeying a 50 kilometre hour speed limit. as it's not signposted, that is the default speed. However, there is still confusion about whether it is part of the highway. So it's something that we still need to discuss with DIT about whether we need to signpost them at 50 kilometres per hour just to avoid any confusion. The law is that it is 50. So if a police officer picked a vehicle up travelling greater than 50, they are within their rights to expiate.
Thank you.
Anything else on the information document, councillors? Councillor Roundtree again.
Thank you. It's just regarding the Canalpin Hall sign out the front of the Canalpin Hall. I know it's been pushed onto the streetscape. I worried it will get lost in the streetscape. It's a simple little sign. They've wanted it for probably the whole time I've been on council. Just wondering why this is so hard and why it's now part of streetscape.
Probably ask the CEO for the answer on that.
So, through you, Mayor, it's not that it's difficult, but we were relying on the streetscape to give us some, I suppose, broad parameters around the look and feel of signs across the district. So we had some image that was similar across the district, and we're relying on that. We can put up a temporary one if that's what, but we want something that says this is Coorong Council and it looks and feels the same pretty much across the district. And the consultants who are doing the streetscapes were going to give us some recommendations around that.
Thank you.
How far away is that initial report?
I'm looking to the director.
Through your mayor, hold a elected member workshop to present the first part of all three streetscapes on the 18th of October.
My concern is, I know we talked about once the streetscape report is done, we will package up sections and look for grant funding and everything else. There'd be some parts of the streetscape like this sign that probably don't need to be packaged up, could possibly be one-offs and done. Is that how you see it, or?
Correct.
The CEO,
Yeah.
no particular reason. Once the stylised is done, it can't be done.
Okay, thank you.
Information document, councillor Bland.
Yes, I have a question from a member of the public in relation to planning stats from customer service. And if we could just have an explanation through you to Miles in relation to the stats. Miles is aware of the question, so I won't go through it.
Thank you. To you, Worship. We see on the customer service stats for planning, there's around about 39 inquiries in the month. Now, they are just the initial inquiries that have come through to customer service staff. It doesn't reflect on the volume of activity in terms of queries that our planning staff manage. And also, as we know, the bulk of the communication in regards to planning occurs in the portal. So the planning portal with email activity, it records all communication in relationship to the development application and essentially statewide. There are other stats that are can be obtained from the portal. We'll put forward council next month in the info doc more details about the planning department and application numbers. But look, of those 39 calls that come through or visits that come through from customer service, I would expect that on average, each one of those probably generates another 3 to 4 communications. And then DAs, we were averaging around about 160 DAs a year. And if you think about the labour to process a DA, I would suggest on average it's probably about 2.5 days. And I've just done a calculation previously that 160 by 2.5 is 400 days in a year. So hence that's why we've got the FTEs we have in the department, and they're flat chat. Just like I was saying before about the planning system hasn't resulted in a decrease in effort by planners. In fact, quite the opposite, and it's quite an issue that the state government's well aware of.
Thank you. I think there was a very answer to the question.
Anything else, Nick? Coleman?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Pathetic Road reconstruction on page 5 of the information document. Pathetic Road Stage 2 is programmed for delivery in late 2022. However, council have not yet received formal notification regarding special local roads program grant funding. I assume that'll be just ticked off as soon as it comes through, and our contractors are raring to go as soon as he can. Is that correct?
So councillor, with grant roads through the special local roads program, as you know, and we've asked for 2 separate amounts, which total 1.8 million this year to do Carcooma and Poltallic. You can't start any of the work until the minister has announced it. Now, while the process has endorsed it up till the minister, he has not announced it yet.
Right. Thank you.
Where we're, the longer the minister puts it off, the harder it is to get it achieved before 30 June next year. So we're awaiting that, and I think as the report shows, it's a little bit difficult, you know, to keep the contractors on lead when they're waiting for the announcement. So
Exactly.
you know, a minister that needs to be talked to, welcome you to.
Oh, thank you. I will.
But that's always been the case, that we cannot start a special local roads or one of those until it's announced. Councillor Bland.
Thank you. And that is in relation to the Star Club report. This has been read by groups in Meningie, and they feature in clubs in CDC who have received particular focused help and resources this year, and include both the Meningie Football and Netball Club. I have been approached by them to ask, could we have some more clarification around that, because the only time that they believe they had asked for some help in particular in this last year was for the skate park, and was told that they were unable to be assisted because it would be a conflict of interest because they were working with Tail and Bend. And I'm not sure what that means because I haven't had a chance to follow up since this came out.
Who was working with
Star Club.
Bridget? Got an answer to that?
I'm not too sure. I can't answer on behalf of the Star Club. I suppose, just remind councillors that we have put on a extra staff member, albeit part-time, to work with sporting clubs across the district to help them through the process and coming out of COVID. I'm not sure if that comment relates in any way, or there's some confusion about what the Star Club is doing and what council is doing, but we can get clarification from the Star Club member if you think that might help, and send that around out of session.
I would appreciate that information so I can take it back. Was that for some reason we were in conflict when they asked for assistance around the skate park. I found that a little bit surprising, but I'm asking the question.
Through you, Mayor, I don't quite understand that question myself, because I think the conversations that staff have had with members of the community around the skate park have been more than inclusive. So I'm not sure where that came from.
Council needed to talk to you, the CEO, around that. I'm sort of having trouble following what happened there. Any other questions on the info document, councillors? Okay, well, we are going to revert back, if we can, to the minute action list. It is on your iPads, and it's been sent through to you all. Have you got any questions from the minute
haven't
action
seen
list?
it.
And I haven't looked yet. Sorry.
I'm going to give you about a minute to find it. As a separate email, I presume, so they will be at the top of your list.
Can I start then? Because the top of my list says the Pelican. And he went down yesterday, sadly. And there are a number of people looking to perhaps try and restore at least part of that. And I know that our director is aware of that. Certainly is noted it's gone. We know it had to go.
So the CEO might outline where this may head if she wishes.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. I was waiting until I got back to talk with Matt about the condition and which bits are salvageable or not. After that, we can then have a look at whether council could even repurpose some of it in a cut down version, whether it's in a park or whether it's, I don't know yet without having a look at it. If we are to dispose of it, there's probably some issues we'd have to look at. Giving a piece of council asset to a community group where we don't think it's fit for purpose would have some issues where we would have to address them. And if we were to dispose of it in any way, that we have in our disposal policy a process that we have to work through. So until we can decide whether or what bits are salvageable and what it might look like, and whether we can make that a small feature in the park by itself, whether it's in a garden or somewhere, and even if that makes sense, we haven't worked through those issues yet, councillor. But if it's to dispose of it to a third party, we need to go through a disposal process and make sure that any liability in regards to a council asset that we have deemed not to be fit is covered off.
So my second question, and I did speak to Matt earlier on around this, as I understand it is the Menengi depot. Could we just ensure that it's covered up, because this process may take some time?
Through you, Mayor, we're hoping, we don't want it to be a long process. We want it to be, let's do the assessment as quick as we can and then work out what the next step is.
Anything else on the minute action list, councillors? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. 285/21 Tailem Bend Playground and potential public toilet facility. Have we seen the actual drawings now for the finished design?
Through you, Mayor.
Yep, certainly.
Same answer as before, it's in the state master plan, so that'll come to the 18th for location. The fencing is probably a lot easier than the toilet, but it is it's certainly not something that's dropped off the radar. It's certainly something front of mind to look at that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Minute action list, councillors. Councillor Taylor up.
Thank you, Mayor. 040/10 connection to potable water, Wellington East. Any movement?
I'm going to refer to the director. I know we've been trying to push this along.
Through you, Mayor. Sorry to say that we haven't had any traction with SA Water on this. So it's a matter of now, I guess, escalating again to get a resolution one way or another. Obviously, again, front of mind, but it's working with a state utility to try and have a positive outcome, whether that be a fully potable water system or something that council still manages.
Thank you. I understand that we've commissioned SA Water to put an engineering report into the condition of the asset. They haven't done it yet, given that they may be, and I'm emphasising this, may be one of the people that may be interested in taking over the asset. We feel that if they made the assessment, at least they'd know what it is. But it's a incredibly frustrating process over this nearly 4 years, councillor, I can assure you. You want to add to that?
Through you, Mayor, is there anything that council can do to expedite this process?
I'm looking at the CEO next.
So through you, Mayor, what I had planned to do if we hadn't got any traction, as the director said, by the end of this term, really, then immediately in the new council, I would make an appointment with the mayor and myself to go and see the CEO and then possibly the minister. At this point in time, they've not responded to any timelines that we've asked them to do. I don't think that there's any point in doing that now until whether it's the current mayor or a new mayor, we meet with them and then escalate the project again.
Thank you.
Another councillor, Councillor Bland.
I have 029/22, the Jubilee Park shelters, and the question's probably to Matt. I know we've got October sitting there, but I understand funding isn't fully available at this point to that, and it did incorporate a whole range of other items. I'm just wondering where we're at with that project.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, the shelters are still in the 22-23 program to be renewed. The package was to include the Pelican, the shelters and the outdoor gym. So the outdoor gym is funded through the program, the playground renewal program, and the shelters are funding through the building renewal program. So they are still 100% in the program. Design work is underway for the shelters that will then go to community consultation. Whether they're in the same location, in the same format, that will be part of the consultation process. We have got a list of people who we need to talk to in that space.
Thank you.
Councillor Roundtree,
The Carnarvon Caravan Park powered sites, how are we going with those?
We haven't got this through you, Mayor. We haven't got the units yet. And I'm not sure of the timeframes on that, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Councillors, they're coming from overseas, so we're not too sure. It's been a little laborious.
Through you, Mayor, there's 18 to put in, we have 9. We could put 9 in, but then they'll use the 9
They'll use the
unpowered
9.
sites. So we'll
Gotta
wait till they're all available, get the contractor in and install as soon as we have them in our hands.
Thank you.
any other questions? Taking that as we've finished the minute action list, councillors. So the next item on the agenda is item 16, confidential items. So for those watching the live stream, please be advised that the meeting is about to move into confidence. The live stream will stop. Those who wish to view the end of the meeting, the video will be available on YouTube after today's meeting.